Today I'm coming to you from Indiana University and the Eskenazi Museum of Art, where we did a live broadcast viewing some prints from some of the greatest photographers of all time. I'm Zach Dobson, documentary and commercial photographer, and my co-host for this event is Dr. Lauren Richman, assistant curator of photography at the museum. 20 years ago, when I was a student at Indiana University, viewing prints in a photography class of mine really had a lasting effect, and I wanted to bring that same experience to my audience. In this broadcast, we talk about some of the greats we all know and love, like Henri Cartier-Bresson, Diane Arbus, William Eggleston, Edward Weston, and so many more. I'm so grateful to the museum for hosting this and thankful to Dr. Richman for her vast knowledge on this topic. I really learned a lot, and I know you will too, so check it out. Let's get close and start here.
Yeah, okay, so this is a photogravure from Alfred Stieglitz. The photo is from 1907, but this print was done in 1916.
Oh, wow.
So this is one of his most renowned images, called the Steerage. And I think if anyone's taken a history of photography course, this is, a very famous image that I'm sure a lot of people are already familiar with. But he was kind of, he worked with, he was really interested in photography as a fine art really early on, which didn't catch speed until much later, like the 1970s, really.
Sure.
And so this is sometimes considered the first modern photograph.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, Picasso really liked it in particular because he was really interested in like the combination of forms and this particular kind of graphic composition. Excellent.
And to people, I apologize for the sound quality. I know it's really echoey in here. This is the first one of these things I'm trying to do on location, and I don't have like a mic to get, the sound better. I mean, I have some earbuds I might be able to plug into the headset, but that, we could pass it back and forth or something. So maybe.
Is it okay can people hear us if we talk right by the camera?
It takes a second for the comments to come through.
Okay.
People will respond. Let me grab my.
Okay, I think it's okay if we stand. Yeah, if we're close, it looks like it's okay. So Stieglitz also published some major photography journals, including Camera Notes and Camera Work. And actually, we have a complete set of both here at the Eskenazi, thanks to our first professor of photography, Henri Holmes-Smith. And we're going to be talking about his work, too.
I did not realize, even though I went to IU, so I'm an alumni. I graduated in 2004 from the journalism school. I did not realize that we had such an esteemed professor of photography who'd been here. He was here a long time, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was here for 30 years. He started in 1947, retired in 77, and we are lucky enough to have his entire archive. In fact, like just the other day, I was speaking with a photographer who's based in Australia, and she was like, "Oh, Henri Holmes-Smith, I know his teaching well."
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And it's just amazing that,
I'm turning YouTube people around. I think I figured out how to do this a little bit better.
Cool.
There we go. All right, I like that.
Yeah, pretty amazing that his name traveled so far.
You have Henri Holmes-Smith. You haven't heard that name in a few months. At the time I was here, I think the main photography professor was Jeffrey Wolin. Did he retire though?
He did. I think he retired in 2015, and we also have his archive here at the museum.
Okay, cool.
So we're kind of trying to build some our photographic archive holdings.
Very
we also
good.
have the archive of Art Sinzaba.
Let's move on down the line here. I'm going to slide you down. We're going to focus on Weston here.
Yeah, so This is, again, a really iconic photograph. It's like, I call these kind of the greatest hits of our collection, I think, because they're the most familiar. This is from 1929, and Weston is kind of always associated with this series of peppers.
Around the peppers here.
Yeah. And so he shot 26 negatives of this green pepper against this kind of like nondescript background. Really sharp focus. I think it's like kind of a sensual print. This, like, the flesh of the pepper is really, I think, beautifully captured. And
yeah, for sure. I hear people all the time with a lot of his pepper series say that it looks like human forms.
Yeah, right. It's really corporeal and like there's a lot of dynamism to it, despite it being a still life.
Now, I was doing a little research on pepper number 30. I did a video about it, and they mentioned, now it was his grandson they were talking to, was saying that he did an exposure that was between 4 to 6 hours for that print.
Really long exposure.
Yeah. And he made a custom aperture for his camera.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
That's
that
that according to his grandson, and I don't know if that applied to all his peppers, but at least with that number 30, the highest on his camera was like an F64, and they said he made one that he figured was the equivalent of like F240.
Wow.
It's like a pinball.
Wow.
So that is according to his grandson.
Okay.
So that's...
We also recently were given a really nice gift of 50 photographs by Edward Weston's son, Brett.
Oh, very cool.
Who's also an esteemed photographer, and we're hoping to do something fun with those sometime in the near future. But he was also interested in still lifes and kind of really honing in on environmental like abstractions and stuff like that.
That's interesting too. This comment, Kyle says it's like a Rorschach test. I see a clenched fist.
Yeah.
I was talking about this with my wife the other day. She said, that she felt the same way, that the peppers were kind of like a Rorschach test, some of them, because for whatever reason, we don't get peppers like this at the grocery store.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you went to the farmer's market, I think they throw away all the ones that have more character to them because people don't want to buy that. I'm going to...
Bring back the peppers with character.
That's right, for all the photographers out there. I'm going to try... this is going to move a little bit, so I apologize. I'm going to try to take this off so I can do some different angles. I want to be able to show the... I want to be able to show some of the textures and maybe show it from a slightly different angle so you can see how it looks. That's probably good. So let's just come at these from the side. We'll start down here. I'm really interested in the view of the prints and getting, some of what it, getting up close to really get the details in there. So that's interesting. The background, you can probably see that kind of texture in the background. And when I saw this online, I could see that texture, and I thought it was some sort of either digital artifact or something about the photographic process. But seeing the real print, I can see that the texture's only in the background above the table. So maybe you had some kind of screen or something behind it.
I think some people think it's like a burlap
or
something.
Okay, that's interesting. Because I found out what the person who was doing the interview was Kim Weston, was his grandson, and he said, "Yeah, that's a good point, Kyle. That's why they're." That's a good question too. Why they're important? Yeah, seeing these prints, you can get a lot more of like what the detail is. But that pepper number 30, he shot in a funnel, like a tin funnel. This one, so he didn't do that. Now I can see up closer. He didn't do that with all of them. That's just must be what he tried for that one. So Kyle asks, so why do these pictures matter? So like, what are the significance? I mean, you talked a little bit about the significance of that Stieglitz print, but would you have anything to add about the significance of what these the peppers are, or his other vegetables that he photographed?
I think you have to remember that this print, this was taken in 1929. I mean, think about the type of art that was being made during that time. And mean, especially for photography, which was really only associated with like the sciences and kind of more practical applications, not really a fine art quite yet.
A lot of the portraits, like we're going to look at that older one there.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's keep moving on down the line here because we've got so many to look at.
Yeah, it looked very different. So it was, and also just kind of focusing on something mundane, I think was not really, it wasn't everyone's instinct to do something like that.
Sure. Well, when you get to Cartier-Bresson, if you're anyone out there is kind of new, you're not familiar with Henri Cartier-Bresson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this photo is from 1932, and Cartier-Bresson is really known for what he kind of called the decisive moment.
Yeah.
Which I think kind of describes like an inherent tension. It's like, I think in this, you're seeing this kind of heel about to touch this water.
I mean, that timing, I mean, obviously there's skill involved, but it takes a certain amount of luck too, because there's no way you could time it purposefully to be that close. I mean, you could time it, an excellent photographer like Cartier-Bresson, I would imagine between 6 inches or a foot or so, but to get it where it's literally about to touch.
Right.
I mean,
pretty tense.
it's pretty wild. That's a good point too, the tension of it.
Yeah.
I've never thought about that before.
Well, it's also, I mean, if you think about the figure to ground relationship, it's like there's both stability and instability happening all at the same time. And then there's also this kind of brilliant mimicking or echoing of this kind of central figure in the poster that's in the background here.
Oh, yeah, wow.
Pose,
cool.
That's depicted there. And this is actually one of Cartier-Bresson's only images that he cropped.
Oh.
He did not crop his images frequently, and the reason why he cropped this one is because he was actually peering through a fence, and so the left side of the composition felt cut off to him, and so he decided to kind of reimagine.
Yeah. I want to say something about that, but then I want to back up real quick because Lorena said about Weston that his work is in reaction to the pictorialists who came before him too. So that's a good point to bring up as well.
Like Stieglitz.
Stieglitz would be considered more of a pictorialist.
Yeah.
Okay. I hadn't done a lot of research or reading on Stieglitz. I did a video about Jacob Riis and the impact of the social photography. That is interesting. I wanted to say something about I wanted to say something about the cropping thing is really interesting to me because there are today too, some purists about cropping. I'm very pro crop if you want to crop, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard to be in the exact spot you want to be to get a picture. So
like someone like Stieglitz, a purist, that would not have been cool with him.
That's funny. I'll probably talk more about this when we get to the color, but I'm totally blanking on the name right now. Not Weston, one of the contemporaries around that time, called Color. What did he call it? Totally blanking. I must not be getting enough sleep lately. He basically said that color was vile.
Yeah.
That it was
like Paul Strand, maybe?
Yeah, it was one of those people. Let's talk about...
Well, quickly, the other thing I wanted to talk about is that with the Cartier-Bresson and the decisive moment is kind of that this is... It's impossible to really experience... this moment actually doesn't exist as a moment in time. It's like a fraction of a second that has been made to become this moment. And I think there's a kind of impossibility there that's nice as well. Yeah,
that's a good point. That's cool. Just the texture. Do you have any idea of when this print would have been made?
I can certainly find out. I think it is from 1932. So often photographers will not do their own printing, or all of these are printed from original negatives. of those artists. Some are printed by the artists themselves, some are not. Some had important printing practices, some did not. So it kind of depends.
There's the dancer there. I got a little zoomed in. You could see that a little bit more.
Yeah, I love that.
That's cool. Mm-hmm. We'll move on to Manuel Álvarez Bravo. I just started learning about some of the Mexican photographers myself. My daughter brought home a biography of Graciela Iturbide, and so I had a post. It is gorgeous, isn't it? The blacks are so rich.
Yeah, really velvety.
It's really interesting because when I was looking for an image to share of this one, there was nothing online that could even come close to doing this justice, because the blacks, the shadows were all wrong. Mm-hmm. But here, like, seeing how rich they are, it's amazing. Yeah, Tucker, for sure. I just learned about Bravo recently, since he was kind of the mentor of Iturbide.
Right.
This photo was 1932 or 33.
Yeah. And so this one we specify here that was printed and published later. So this is from a portfolio.
Okay, so it's a later print.
But yeah, I think Álvarez Bravo met Tina Modotti and Edward Weston in Mexico, and they kind of introduced him to their circle of artists and writers, Diego Rivera, Frida Kahlo, Rufino Tamayo. And so we kind of became involved in this really interesting circle of people. And eventually, André Breton, who was kind of the father of surrealism, I guess, maybe the patriarch, of surrealism, visited Mexico City in 1938. They met, and then 2 years later featured Álvarez Bravo's work in the Exposition of Surrealism in Mexico City.
Very cool. So
Álvarez Bravo is kind of known for these unusual juxtapositions, interesting cropping. I mean, just the angle of how the light is hitting the subject in this photograph. And he also tended to focus on indigenous Mexican culture and kind of how that was changing rapidly.
That's cool.
With modernization.
So that would be why then Iturbide got in a lot of that work too, documenting a lot of the cultures, kind of like at his encouragement.
Right.
I love how her eye is in the shadow, but there's that sparkle in it. You can see her eye pop right there.
Also just the beautiful profile of her face. I mean, it's like...
Yeah.
And her hand.
For sure.
Floating.
The detail. Mm-hmm. Now, is there a way to know, either specifically for this photo or his work in general? Oh, Kyle, I was just about to ask the same question. Is she posing for this, do you think, or no? Or did he typically stage his images? I mean, I've seen some of his that look like documentary in nature.
Right.
And I've seen other ones that, look like they're posed.
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't know. This one feels candid to me.
I agree with that. It has that feel. It does have that feel. Because part of me I would wonder if it was staged, if people would have put... I think your tendency as a photographer maybe would be to have a little bit more of her face in the light.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be, better like that, but I would think as a photographer that might be more of your natural tendency.
Yeah, I mean, the focus is really on her hair.
Yeah. That's
and it's
a good
just
point.
Like this kind of almost perfect splice, for lack of a better word.
She knows of other... Do you know... So, Lorena wants to know, do you know of other Mexican photographers who were kind of outside of the surrealist, either like from that era, or...
I would have to think about that. Let me think about that.
No, you're right. Jello Thomas, her face is secondary in the image. That's a good point. Very cool. Let's keep moving here. Before I go up to that one, I want to stop by this one. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is an image by Dorothea Lange, and this is from from 1937. So Dorothea Lange was hired by someone named Roy Stryker, who was the head of kind of all of the photography units in New Deal, during the New Deal. So the US government kind of developed a series of government-sponsored programs and projects between 1933 and 1939 as a response to the Great Depression and kind of a need to document, the kind of the need for financial relief and reform, and to promote kind of a emotional recovery from one of the worst economic crises of the 20th century. And so Roy Stryker hired a bunch of photographers, including Dorothea Lange, to set out and photograph communities affected, especially agricultural communities affected by the Great Depression. And so this is an image of a family in Memphis, Texas, actually. And I'm sure most people are familiar with Migrant Mother, which is the most famous image from this time. And I think there's still some qualities that are similar. I mean, if you think about the angle, we're kind of down below, and it's an upward angle, kind of monumentalizing these people and trying to show them in kind of a different light, I guess.
Now, it's interesting. I see a little bit of, there's a couple little spots and maybe like a little something on this woman's shoulder that's from the negative, probably. Yeah. Just that, Right. It's interesting. I think it just, adds some character.
I mean, the point was to get these circulated as widely as possible.
Yeah.
So FDR was really trying to get everyone to kind of understand the depth of crisis, but not give up hope.
Yeah.
So kind of there's a tendency towards like heroicism as well in some of these images.
Yeah. Very cool. We've got so many to look at. I'm going to keep moving along here. This is, so Harry Callahan is not someone that I was personally familiar with, but when I saw this image, I really loved it. One thing I try to do on here is compare the color to what's showing up on the screen versus what I see in real life. It's really pretty close. The blues on the screen are a little more blue. They look a little more like turquoise, kind of a greenish color in real life. But, for a representation that I have no control over, it's really pretty close. So this says dye transfer print. So how does that work?
So a dye transfer print, and we'll be talking about this a little later when we look at work by Henri Holmes Smith, was an early color process. But it was a photomechanical process in which the photographer creates matrices. So the image was printed basically on a special type of transparency film.
Okay.
And then those transparencies are soaked in different dyes. So much like a printer today, an inkjet printer probably, where you soak in cyan, yellow, and magenta separately. And then you roll them out, kind of like a silk screen print. Okay. On the surface of the photographic paper.
Very cool. So there's 3 different transparencies that are shot? Because you can
use the same one.
You can use the same one in multiple dyes?
Yeah.
Okay.
But usually I think a couple were made, not to like model anything.
Yeah.
But this was...
You want to see that?
From 1941, so this was kind of early in that...
I'm going to turn this for the people here real quick.
Earlier in that process.
Yeah.
So this, obviously, long exposure.
Yeah.
And color photography was not at all associated with the fine arts.
Yeah.
In this period.
Yeah.
It was really kind of ascribed to you know, like commercial photography, fashion, advertising,
sure.
etc. And Harry Callahan taught at the New Bauhaus in Chicago in 1946. He had met Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, a Hungarian photographer and artist who had been at the Bauhaus in Dessau and had immigrated to the United States. And actually, our very own Henry Holmes-Smith also taught at the New Bauhaus just
that's cool.
about 10 years before Harry Callahan was there.
Nice.
But the New Bauhaus still exists technically as the Institute of Design at the Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago.
Okay.
But I think the interesting thing about Harry Callahan is that he was able to master kind of formalist images as well as documentary. So he also was very traditional in some senses.
Okay.
And that's kind of, that flexibility and agility was kind of important, I think, to his career.
That's cool. Sorry for the rotation here, people. I am getting on the tripod for a minute because I'm holding this rig with two phones on it. I'm broadcasting simultaneously. My arms need a little bit of a rest, but I will, zoom into some of the prints too. Yeah.
But his method was to go out every single morning with his camera, take a walk, and make photographs.
That's awesome.
And he did that pretty religiously, I'd say.
Yeah, that's great.
This is in Detroit.
Cool.
He was born in Detroit and grew up there. So this is kind of a reflection on his own city.
Very cool. We're going to slide on down the line here.
Mm-hmm.
So is that, someone asked if that's a series. Did he do a series of either that type of specific thing or?
I don't think it was part of a specific series. He definitely photographed a lot in Detroit, but most of the images I was able to find are black and white and not color.
I looked up this photo too because I wanted to see, and from just my quick search too, I didn't see anything else that really looked like that one.
Right.
I did see some other color, but it didn't have that kind of like motion blur.
Yeah.
There's one of like a barbershop or something.
Right. I feel like this print is fairly unique for his practice.
Yeah, it's very cool. I like that one a lot. We're going to move on to Vivian Maier here.
Yeah, so this is an image taken by Vivian Maier around 1953. She was a street photographer and was not known until after her death. And kind of the story, she actually worked as a nanny for 40 years where I grew up, Chicago's North Shore.
Okay.
And all throughout that entire time, she was taking photographs of the city and kind of reflecting upon her environment. But she was born in France and then came to the United States. And so I think there's something nice about kind of a European perspective on the United States, and we'll talk about that with Robert Frank as well.
Sure.
Just having a different perspective.
Yeah, totally.
But this is a self-portrait, and you can see her just barely.
Yeah, we were looking at this a little more
it's kind of a
beforehand. I'm going to rotate you a little bit here. That's her. It's called self-portrait, but we were saying that probably it's the people who bought all her negatives that named the picture, most likely.
So she
but that's her, in the background
more
there.
More than 150,000 photographs during her lifetime. And like I mentioned, she was only discovered in 2007 when payments to her storage unit were overdue. And the storage company auctioned off the contents of the unit, and it was basically all of her prints, her negatives, everything she produced was in the storage unit. And so it was purchased by a collector, and then he kind of made it his mission to get her work out into the public.
Very cool. I know we've got a lot of LOL self-portrait. Yeah, exactly. I know we've got a lot of people who are, big Vivian Maier fans, we're going to move on down the line. These next two are from one of my personal favorite photographers, Robert Frank. They're both. Would they both be a part of the Americans? Both of these are.
Yeah, they're both part of his series called The Americans. So he was born in Switzerland, and
I'm going to turn it for a minute so you can see both together for a second.
Yeah, he came to the United States in 1947 to work in fashion, and decided that he hated it and wanted to switch gears. So he applied for a Guggenheim Fellowship. He was granted the fellowship and decided to travel across the U.S., starting in New York City and actually ending in Indianapolis.
Oh, he ended here. That's
so we didn't go all the way across, but he got halfway.
Was he driving?
He was driving, yeah.
Okay.
So, akin to Jack Kerouac, who was doing this around the very same time, basically 1 year apart. And eventually they met, and Robert Frank asked Kerouac to write the introduction to the book.
That's another book I was talking about. Did I say this already?
I don't think so.
Okay.
On the road.
We were talking earlier about I had taken some books out of the library. I never thought of it before. Yeah, I agree. A genius for sure. I had never thought about taking photo books out of the library, and this is one of the books I got from my local library, and I haven't actually read it yet. I'm excited to read the foreword from Kerouac.
Yeah.
I'm going to move a little bit closer here with the one
But yeah,
thumb.
what I like about his work is, again, he offers a perspective outside of an American perspective on American life.
Yeah.
And he usually kind of captures these moments of like anxiety, loneliness. I mean, the American flag is literally spliced across this person, kind of decapitating them.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get violent with the language if you want.
Yeah.
But it's not a very positive, to me, it doesn't read as a very positive reflection.
Sure, it's kind of brooding and a little bit, dingy in a way.
Yeah, and he also experimented with blur, which is kind of more evident.
We'll come around
in this
here.
one.
So now the people on TikTok can see my rig here. I was carrying that whole top part from here, taking that out, carrying this whole thing around. So, yeah, I wanted to include this one because of the Indianapolis connection. So, was he through here multiple times, or was this from the end of his series?
It was the end of this trip,
Okay.
this series. So, he kind of, he revolutionized documentary photography. He wasn't afraid of ambient lighting and blur, and I mentioned the kind of oblique angles. And so I think this image, I think, kind of communicates the transitory nature of the railway station, kind of the loneliness, lots of horizontal lines and reflections.
Yeah, the reflections are great.
And, the person who works here is kind of enveloped into that space as well, kind of disappearing almost.
Yeah, definitely. That's cool. Sorry for the shake there. I'll move things over. Yeah, it is interesting. Do you think, so you are saying, he's one of the kind of pioneers of that style. Do you think there were other people who were doing it kind of at the same time as him, or people kind of emulated his style later?
I think both.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, certainly people have emulated his style since. But yeah, I mean, I think someone like Lee Friedlander, who we'll take a look at, and Garry Winogrand certainly had similar styles, but not the same.
Yeah, no, you can see a difference for sure.
Yeah.
Let's move on down the line here. I'm going to come to this Arbus print. So,
So this.
before we get into that, someone did ask, do you think that the people considered that sort of like blur and imperfection like kind of shocking or startling or like
probably
unsettling at the time.
Right. I mean, it certainly wasn't typical.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay, I've got to make a couple small adjustments here, so bear with me. We've got multiple levels of art here.
We had too many things we wanted to look at.
Yeah, I'm going to try to lower this tripod a little bit so we can get down to that Arbus. So it's going to be shaky for just a moment. I need like one of those, I don't know what they're called. The video guys use the big motion things.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Now we're on the Arbus.
Yeah. So this photo is from 1968. It was printed later. Diane Arbus worked as a fashion photographer for a while, and then her mentor and teacher, Lisette Model, kind of encouraged her to get out and, you know, hit the streets and kind of expand her practice. She used a Rolleiflex camera, which is notable, the square format, and she was kind of interested in photographing folks who at the time were marginalized in some way. And there are a lot of different reactions to this work. Definitely ethical concerns. Some people find her work very empathetic, and some people find it very discordant and kind of confrontational.
Sure.
But this series, she spent a weekend with this family in Westchester, New York. And it was for a project called Family Album, which was kind of meant as a reflection on suburbia and kind of the changes, the changing dynamics of the American nuclear family. Remember 1968, a period of great upheaval politically, a lot of changes happening globally, but especially in the United States. And so this was actually, she took 300 images of this family over this weekend, and it became one of 10 photographs included in her last project called A Box of 10 Photographs, which was editioned. There were 50 editions made. They sold out immediately, and this one in particular, this photograph, is particularly sought after. And actually, I spent 2 years at the Smithsonian American Art Museum in Washington, D.C., and my mentor there, a curator, John Jacob, did a really wonderful moving show of the box of 10 photographs. So he kind of traced where they all ended up.
That's interesting.
And he did a really nice show of those.
That's cool. It's a good, detail you can see up, good detail within the image.
Yeah, there was always like a little bit of humor in her work, playfulness, which we'll kind of see in someone like Lee Friedlander's work as well, and even Garry Winogrand.
I think it's interesting about how much of the artist's perspective comes in to the scene, and you wonder, the people have this kind of like disaffected, kind of like, I don't know, they might look like they're kind of bored or not necessarily happy, but...
Right. And look at this, this is their backyard.
Right, yeah. No, that's a good point. And so that could be her interpretation,
right.
Whereas maybe there were plenty of pictures of them smiling, but she felt like they were like posing for her or putting something on. I read somewhere, somebody mentioned that famous photo of hers of the twins, that the parents said I don't know what she did to get that picture. That did not look like them at all. So that kind of made me think, how much of that is selective, not just selective editing, but selective shooting.
Sure.
But it could be, I don't know. I mean, some people, obviously everyone's influenced by their own perspectives. Lots of people wouldn't want to be, living that suburban kind of life. I'm sure she was kind of like that type of person. Not interested. But it's a beautiful print, and it's, obviously one of the iconic photos of American photography for sure. Right. It's cool seeing that like this. Now, I'm trying to think of the direction to go. I guess since we're on this level, let's just move right over. We'll come back up to Meatyard in a minute there.
So this is, one of my personal favorite photographs in the collection.
I'm going to say this. Kyle said, I feel like I have a story in my mind about this family. I don't like them. I get that too.
I mean, they're not depicted as being very likable.
No, it seems like they're both really, the way it's projected, like they're both very uninterested in their child. The way that it's projected, it's hard to know for sure, but I agree with that. They don't seem very likable in the photo. Yeah. Someone a pair of pics, and she waited for the eeriness to pop up. It'd be interesting to see one, her contact sheets. Yeah. And two, if there was ever something that anyone was shooting at the same time as her, to see another photographer's perspective from the same event, which I know a lot of the street photographers went out shooting together. Yeah. And so it'd be interesting as like a study to see from the same day or the same scene. Yeah. Very cool. Eggleston here.
Yeah, so this is called Red Ceiling. It was taken in Greenwood, Mississippi in 1973. It's also a dye transfer print. And so dye transfer is also really kind of became popular because it was able to reproduce color so vibrantly. And we'll see that when we talk about Smith's work. I mean, this red is just like blood red. It like looks wet. It looks dingy, kind of sordid. There are all these like different emotions I think that come out.
Yeah. Now, do you think that the color, because it's a dye transfer, do you think the color is reflective of what the color was at the scene? Is there any way to?
I think so.
I mean, it's hard to know about this specific image, right? But like generally speaking, does that process kind of like capture the real life colors?
I think it's very accurate, and it also has a long lifespan. So these dye transfer prints are really stable. Okay. Which is good, but the process doesn't exist anymore. Kodak discontinued the materials and chemicals in the 90s. So there were a lot of photographers who kind of bought up that stock like as soon as they heard that it was being discontinued, and have been hoarding those materials since.
Yeah, there are a lot. I shoot all digital, but there's a lot of people I interact with that are film photographers, and that's the way it is with film. So many people have like bought up and hoarded all the film stock, or if something's been discontinued, they'll sell it for like exorbitant amounts for a roll of film that people can't get anymore.
But yeah, so he was best known for his embrace of color in the mid-60s, and he was interested in kind of like ordinary images of everyday life, mundane subject matters. I mean, this is a ceiling with a light bulb and then a Kama Sutra poster.
Yeah, you know what's funny is I don't think until I was familiar with this photo, but until you sent me the list of some of the things you had, and I took a closer look, I don't think I ever noticed that Kama Sutra poster.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people do, because it's also kind of blurred, and there's,
It definitely adds an interesting element to the photo. Yeah, it definitely. Both in subject and the color.
Right, so people like, Walker Evans and Robert Frank and Paul Strand were really against color.
I think Walker Evans might have been the one who called it vulgar. Yeah. I think now that my brain has had a chance to think
and
about
anti-intellectual too.
Oh.
A real hit to the gut.
Right? I like the there's so many the lines just really take your eye through the photo and back out the other side and around. It just that dimensionality of those chords really make the photo.
Yeah, I mean
more
really
active.
well composed.
Yeah.
It's got nice geometry to it.
Yeah.
Famous photo curator at the Museum of Modern Art, John Sarkowski, he called Eggleston's work a suitcase full of drugstore color prints.
Oh, wow.
Which I kind of like, personally.
Yeah, there's something different. People didn't like these folks who came along and really shook things up with the style and content. Here's the poster you can see down there. It's funny.
So
the color the color I'm seeing on the screen is only slightly more saturated than what it is in real life. So, I mean, that's really like an accurate, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, pretty accurate.
It's a pretty accurate representation of the color. It's very cool.
Yeah, so Eggleston's work was featured in an exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York in 1976.
Okay.
And that was kind of a watershed moment for the history of color photography.
Okay.
It really kind of brought it through to the fore.
Was Eggleston working maybe slightly earlier than Stephen Shore in some of the color stuff?
Yeah.
I think because when I was looking at that book, it seemed like it was mostly like starting around 74 or so.
Yeah.
So it seems like
I think they were in line.
because when I've read some of the history stuff, people tend to mention them in the same breath, but it seems like there was definitely an overlap. Maybe Eggleston was doing a little bit earlier. This is a cool print. I like this one a lot. The other thing that I think is interesting, it seems to me like a lot more earlier color stuff has been kind of discovered more recently. Someone like Saul Leiter, I really love Saul Leiter's work, and I think because, I mean, my interpretation, if you have any, you let me know what you think, is that, I mean, he didn't show his color work, so it was like maybe he didn't want to like deal with that blowback of shooting color in the late 1950s, early 1960s.
I mean, it makes sense. It was not received well for a really long time. And you weren't taken seriously as a fine art photographer.
Well, and his book wasn't released until 2005, his color photographs, and that's really interesting. Who else did I see? Helen Levitt had a lot of color from like the 60s and 70s too. Yeah. But I feel like maybe what it is that in so many people say Eggleston and Shore like kind of legitimized it in the art world.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But like, so while some of these other photographers did stuff that was very good as well, they weren't like received in the art world at the time.
Right. Someone like Henry Holmes Smith.
Henry Holmes Smith. Going back to 1941.
Just bringing it back.
That's an amazing image.
I mean, Henry was making, well, that's Harry Callahan, but the Smith
that's right.
images,
Yeah, Henry Holmes Smith.
He was working in color in the 30s.
Really?
Yeah, so.
I got my H names swapped in my head there.
I mean, they were friends too, so that complicates things a little bit.
All right, bear with me while I move this on up here. We're going to talk about Ralph Eugene Meatyard. I know. It seems like so many people, especially, photographers and artists have these adopted names like Man Ray, but that's his name. That's his given name. So I might have to, well, let's see. So if you had something you wanted to start us off with.
Tell you a little bit about him. The photo's from 1964, and this was printed later in 1974. This is probably one of his most famous images. Certainly the subject matter is most recognizable as Meatyard. He was actually an optician, and he was based in Kentucky. and eventually got into photography and started photographing his friends and his family members, but always kind of incorporated interesting props. In this case, we're looking at like drugstore masks that he purchased and had everybody wear. And in his mind, I think there's a quote of him saying something like, "There's no such thing as a real person or a hidden person, that everybody is wearing masks."
Yeah. I just read a bunch of stuff about him because I wanted to do a post on him leading up to this.
Yeah.
And I liked his quote. Sorry, guys, I'm going to pop this out. Maybe. There we go. He had a quote about masks non-personalizing a person. Mm-hmm. That's what he called it. I thought that was a really interesting way to say it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he like incorporated doll parts and dead animals and kind of focused on abandoned spaces. And I find his images quite dark, but there's always humor to them. Look at these masks. The kind of it's kind of incongruous, like his photos with who it seemed like he was as a person too, because he was like this family man who would bring his kids into these photos, and I read he was led his kids PTA. And they're like Little League, like ran the Little League or something like that. A family man.
Yeah. So, and, really into like Zen, Buddhism and stuff. I've got two things here people are asking I want to address. One is Kyle's asking about where the photos come from, how the museum came by them, and maybe anything, specifically. This sounds like something we can touch on here as we go through, like why these specific ones were chosen. Mm-hmm.
Well, I can tell you the Meatyard comes from the Henri Holmes-Smith archive. So this was either given to Henri by Gene, as he was known, to his pals, or it was, I think it was given to Henri by Meatyard himself. It's part of a portfolio. So that's just a series of maybe 10 prints that are selected by the photographer and then sold in editions. And so, works come into the museum in a variety of ways. Sometimes they're gifts or donations. Sometimes they're acquisitions in which funds are raised to purchase works. And it kind of depends. I think here at IU we had a director Tom Solly, who was really interested in photography, modernist photography, and was very well off himself. So he personally purchased a lot of photography and then donated it to the museum later.
That's cool.
So there are, a variety of ways.
So, Per Pixon on here asks, did Arbus and Meatyard know each other's work? That's a good question.
I don't know. That is a good question.
Let's see, if he was working they were working at the same time. Yeah. Do you know around when she started? That picture of hers was 1968, the family here. Mm-hmm. Had she?
She had a really short career, actually. Unfortunately, she died by suicide in 1971. But so her career was cut pretty short.
They both died at about around the same time, because he was 1972.
Yeah.
They're the same. Yeah, they're the same age, so they must have really been working at the same time. He was 1925, and she was born 1923.
Yeah.
And she died in 1972. Yeah.
I think all four, all of these on this wall.
Yeah.
Knew of each other.
This is cool. Let's move down. So we've got Lee Friedlander here.
So Friedlander, this is also from 1968. This was taken in New Orleans. He was kind of born and raised in California and then was based in New York for a long time. He, early on in his career, he photographed musicians for Atlantic Records, which
cool.
is kind of interesting.
That is interesting. I didn't know that.
And then began street photography in 1948, which is what he is now best known for.
Yeah.
He always played with reflections and shadows and kind of unexpected overlaps. And I think there's kind of a constant awareness of his relationship to the picture plane.
Yeah, I love that about his work.
Giving that the same amount of importance to his relationship to a subject, for instance. So he's really aware of exactly what's going on here.
Yeah. That's something I always talk about when I talk about how are we influenced by other photographers? Like, what do we do? Like, I've asked people before, like, what do you do that, like you got the idea from somebody else?
Yeah.
And for me, I always mention Lee Friedlander, because I was like, oh, I can leave myself in the pictures.
Yeah.
As a journalist, you're always trying to take yourself out of the pictures and make sure your reflection doesn't show up, but kind of moving away from that strict, journalism moniker. It's like, I can let my shadow fall in there because I am there. I'm a part of the scene.
Right.
Or I love to do it with my family when I'm taking pictures of my family, because then it feels like when they have these pictures in the future,
You're in it.
I'm in it in a way, like my presence. So I really like that. And something that I see here, is that a mirror in the back there? That maybe? That's interesting.
I don't know what that is.
It kind of looks like a
He's right in there.
mirror on the wall in the back that he's getting reflection off of.
Yeah,
It adds this additional layer that you can't see unless you get really up close to these images.
Right, and if you see here the reflection of what's behind, everything kind of,
using the
planes are really jumbled and
That's true too, because your mind thinks that this building continues all the way across, but really it's cut, and what you're seeing, I see. Yeah, okay. That's cool. The other person, I wonder who the person is there, looking over his shoulder.
Right. Yeah.
I like the a lot of the unknowns. What is the title of this one? Is it just New Orleans, Louisiana?
Yeah.
New Orleans, Louisiana, 1968.
So he had gone to New Orleans for the first time in 1957, I think, to document Jazz Fest, which is fun. And then in 1967, a year before this image was made, John Sarkowski, the Museum of Modern Art photo curator and director that I mentioned previously, included Friedlander's work, as well as Arbus's and Garry Winogrand's work, in a really important show called New Documents.
Oh, what year did you say that was?
67.
67, okay.
And so that was kind of their, big moment, and kind of when this playfulness in street photography kind of became better known and incorporated. Personally, I feel like I've had this interest change from wanting everything to be clear and understood in a picture to I really like the kind of mystery of a lot of these photographers, what exactly is going on. I don't think the story would be better if I knew. I like the ambiguity is the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Not knowing who that guy is or what's happening here. Or in this one, let's move over to Garry Winogrand. Not knowing really anything about who the people are, what's going on.
This one is a really dynamic image with a lot going on. A ton of contrasting light and shadows. Just the way that these shadows of these women kind of pull you right into the center of the image. It's
I call it the light of God is upon them.
Right.
There's so many elements that every time I look at this, I think about another part of it. The fact that they're on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Right, and you only notice that when you get really close and see the stars.
And so it's I wonder who that is. Can we see who that is? Whoops. I'm clicking on stuff. I'm trying to read the name.
Laura.
Is it Loretta Parsons? I don't know. Something Ella. Luella Parsons. I just wondered if it was somebody I know who they were. I don't know who that is. If anyone knows who that is, let us know. Yeah, shine on. That light on them is just incredible. Yeah. And you've got,
contrasting, light, shadow, contrasting age groups, social conditions.
I
mean, we've got the women in the center who have been, maybe shopping or just hanging out, and then you have a little boy, and his gaze is going directly toward this person kind of slumped over in this wheelchair. There's also a lot of action happening here with the taxi cab.
The different social standings for sure, and the fact that the ones in the light are the women who seem like they're at the peak of the social ladder there. Obviously anything would just be guessing, but it could be that they're in the movie industry or models or just well off. And then that the people at the bus stop here are there's more of like the immigrant working class. And this person, who knows, this is 69. They could be some type of veteran, or they could be an addict or something, and just pulling in this whole scene together. It's really, move a little bit
but I think
closer.
He was really interested in angles too. Kind of weird angles that people would not initially go for, I think. So he tilted his camera a lot, and his scenes are usually just really dynamic in the way that they pull together.
Yeah.
And he took thousands of shots.
Yeah, so many. When you see the way he shoots and moves the camera around, it's no wonder that most of his images were not squared up. Right. And you've got those angled horizons.
Right.
All right. Yeah, very cool. We move on down here.
Yeah, so this is an image by Sebastião Salgado, a Brazilian photographer who's still working today. It's from 1991, shortly after American forces pushed the Iraqi army out of Kuwait during Operation Desert Storm. Saddam Hussein kind of undertook a scorched earth policy and began burning these oil wells. So over 700 oil wells were on fire. It was one of the worst environmental disasters in history. And so Salgado is documenting the people who are essentially fighting the fires and trying to contain the disaster. He's a social documentary photographer and photojournalist, covers geopolitical conflicts, genocide. I think he's with Magnum now and has been for a while.
Okay.
But his work, just like the range of tones in this work alone is just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And kind of the way that these men are kind of glazed in this.
Yeah, they look like
heavy
statues.
Yeah, like heavy, flammable oil. It's
the way that drips off of the wellhead there is really.
And then you can see some of the fires.
Yeah, the fires in the background. The history here is very interesting. Salgado is one of my favorite photographers. I was very influenced by him when I was a student here. His book Migrations, I think, was relatively new at the time. And that was a book that I studied a lot. And, it always comes up with him. His images are so beautiful, but a lot of times, they depict these terrible things that are happening, like all of the gold mining photos. And it's interesting to get people's perspectives on that, because some people don't like that.
Right. Are you aestheticizing violence?
Sure,
bringing people in? Is that a tactic for bringing people into the image and the story? Drawing more attention to the conflict? I think there are a lot of ways of thinking about it.
Yeah, and I think that to me, my personal take on all that with the mining stuff was that it's a way of like really humanizing people. I mean, the beauty is in the art, but it's in the people. It comes like that's the source. I feel like it's an honor. It's a way to honor the people by creating something like that. And I did a post a long time ago about Salgado's mining stuff that got a lot of people talking, and it was interesting hearing the perspectives because some people were like, yeah, I don't like these. I think he's using the people to make money. And one thing I think some people know about Salgado, but not a lot of people, is that, I mean, yeah, he was a wealthy Brazilian. He came from a wealthy family, and he was working at like the coffee exchange or something in London before he went to photography full time. So I'm like, he was rich. Like he had no reason, like nobody gets rich off of documentary photography. No. So, I mean, he's not doing it out of money. Yeah. You know, yeah, he's, I'm sure.
I mean, he also is putting himself in a lot of danger in many of
That's true. I think I read something about him initially. Some of the gear he brought was melting.
Wow.
Like a lens was melting, and he had to get something sent in that could withstand higher heat.
Wow.
I think it was him who said that. Because I just read about this like the other day. So and he wasn't prepared gear-wise for all the heat and everything. So he said he found some like clothing that was left behind by some Iraqis or something that he was able to. So we're not on a real strict time schedule. I do want to move a little bit because I definitely want to talk about these processes and Henry Holmes Smith. Yeah. Let's touch on this photo of Graciela Iturbide.
Yeah, so this is from 2012, taken in Mozambique.
Oh, okay. So, yeah,
it's
very recent.
Here. In 2006, so this was another example of one being printed later. In 2006, she traveled to Mozambique, where she spent 12 days photographing communities affected by the AIDS crisis.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so this is a baobab tree, kind of wrapped with fishing line, and she was interested in kind of the interconnectivity of people, of landscape, objects, and I think, I think this is a really good example of those components coming together. She always kind of makes like intimate photographs usually of daily life in Mexico, but she has traveled quite a bit in India, Italy, Africa, kind of all over the place.
Very cool. Something that strikes me too are like the tones are very like, I don't know what the technical term would be, but they're very like subtle, kind of soft. It's a little, like the blacks aren't fully black.
Right.
I like it. It's very, it feels like it matches the mood of the photo, the print itself.
Right.
It's a little more contrasty on the screen than what it looks like in real life.
Yeah. Really soft, kind of matte quality to it as well.
Yeah, the matte, that's a good point, good thing to mention. I'm going to zoom in on that a little bit. Yeah, it is just very, it feels very like introspective and soft, like the printing matches the mood of the photo to me. That's very cool.
Yeah.
This would be a good opportunity let's go down and get, let's talk about Henry Holmes Smith here. And what I want to do is maybe, let's see, you're on this side. I don't want to look at his work upside down. So let me get set here. We're going to kind of restage, and let me get this in here. Let's see, I'll go this way. Maybe. There we go. All right, so let me work out the angles here and get everybody adjusted. We're going down to this down. So where do you want to start? Do you want to start on the end to talk about the process a little bit?
Go that way.
Okay, so we're going to start.
Yeah, so I can kind of, maybe if I stand a little closer, talk a little bit about Henri's biography and kind of how he got here. I had mentioned earlier that he taught at the new Bauhaus in Chicago. He was invited by Moholy-Nagy to be the first instructor of the light workshop there, which is very cool. Henri was very influenced by Moholy-Nagy and kind of experimental techniques.
Yeah.
And so he was hired by IU in 1947. And
Okay.
I think it was in 1949 that he started experimenting with Caro corn syrup,
Okay.
which could not be more Midwestern. I've been thinking about. And so we'll kind of shift the camera to catch this first print on the left. So
Sure, yeah, let's talk about that process. The YouTube camera is getting a little low on battery, so I wanted to plug it in for a few minutes. Okay, so this first one on the left.
Yeah, so this is Henri kind of in process. He's pouring the Caro corn syrup on a glass sheet. And so what he would do is he would do this all in the dark and kind of move the syrup around on the glass sheet in different shapes, kind of improvise.
Uh-huh.
And then he would activate with a foot pedal a theater spotlight.
Huh.
I should also say that he had already placed a piece of light-sensitive paper on a table. And so he's moving this around, then activates the light to make an exposure.
So the light comes from straight above.
Right, catching.
And it goes on to this, but there's paper
Goes
underneath
through.
him.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And so this is an example of that process here.
Yeah, then we'll see. Move over.
So that's a cameraless photograph, right? He's not using his camera to create this image. He's depending upon light-sensitive paper, light, and chemistry. And so this is a good result, or a good example of his work. This is Man and Wife.
Do you know, did he set out to make them look like something, or did he call it Man and Wife after he saw the result? I'm curious about that.
He did both. I think he was definitely more interested in kind of improvising and just seeing what the results were like.
Yeah.
And then he ultimately stuck with, I would say, probably 20 different images and would reprint them in different color combinations, which you're about to see. And he was very interested in the dye transfer process.
So these, would it stay on the Caro would stay on the plate? Mm-hmm. And he could make multiple prints from the same, pouring process?
This is what is confusing about it, because he rephotographed the cameraless print. So initially when he poured the syrup and made the exposure on the piece of paper, that was a unique print because there's no negative.
Got it. Yes.
Then he would rephotograph it on matrix film, which we talked about with Harry Callahan's work, and then create all kinds of prints. So that's why you're able to see multiple versions of the same cameraless work.
I see. That makes sense. Okay, we're moving. Let's move over a little bit. So here's, whoops, sorry. YouTube people, I'm shaking you a lot. There you go.
Yeah, so here's one version of that, Man and Wife in color. And what I love about Henri's work is that you can see this one, actually the next one's probably a better example of this, but in a dye transfer print, you'd always want to print perfectly in register so that all of the colors, all of the lines match, and that everything looks realistic.
Okay.
Henri was interested in synthetic. That's not a associated with real life and
everything.
Okay. So he would do multiple transfers, whereas a regular dye transfer print is only 3: cyan, magenta, yellow.
Okay.
And so this, like, what I love about this one is, first of all, you can see the kind of the before and after. But if you get close to some of these details, you can see those different dyes.
Oh yeah, you can see it better up close. Yeah,
commingling.
That's cool. Yeah, very cool. I'm trying to do it in a way that's not gonna cast my shadow on it.
Yeah, so he experimented. He did like hundreds and hundreds of variations of the same image with different color combinations. So sometimes he was doing as many as like 6 to 12 dye transfers, meaning like layers of dye on the same.
One. Yeah.
On the same.
Oh, that's
then
interesting.
There are like hundreds in the archive of this image, but different versions of color.
They'd be one of a kind.
Each color print, is one of a kind.
Right. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. Do you think that since it's such an experimental process and you can't know exactly how it's going to turn out, do you think people like that would keep all of the versions of it that they made, or would they ever be like, oh, I'm not sure how I feel about this one, and toss it? Or
yeah. Well, I'll just say that he was very prolific in his printing.
I mean, I'd imagine you'd keep it, but you sometimes hear about artists who are so picky that they'll like destroy their own work if it's not.
He was, but he was also not really showing a lot of people his work, which is, I think, one of the main reasons why he's kind of been lost in history.
Sure.
But I'll just, as an example, the archive is over probably at this point 6,000 objects.
Oh,
and
wow.
Not all of that is his work, but the majority of it is. So
that's interesting. I think I mean, personally, like, I'd want to keep them because you never know how your feelings about stuff are going to change over time.
Right.
So then it seems like he probably did with how many he has there. This one's cool too.
Yeah, I mean, the pink, but like the vibrancy of the color is just, it's really hard to reproduce it. I mean, it even looks flat kind of in TikTok right now. They really are prints that you have to experience in person. There's just no alternative really in my mind.
That is, I agree. This is insanely gorgeous.
And there's a lot of depth, like especially in this next one that we're going to look at, there's a lot of depth that's just lost in reproduction.
That blue at this angle looks almost like luminescent.
Right.
It really that's really cool.
Like deep sea fish.
Yeah. Yeah, I like these a lot.
Yeah, they're really psychedelic, and he was, this is from 1977, which is, good timing, but he was making color combinations like this earlier.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So even before like the idea of psychedelia even existed.
Yeah, that's cool.
This is probably my favorite. I think it would make an insanely cool album cover.
Yeah, right.
Which is maybe blasphemous of me to say.
No.
But like the depth that I was talking about, these fuchsias are just like popping out at us in here, and I think probably difficult to see.
Yeah. But I feel like I'm like looking through like a tear in the space-time continuum there. Like through the red, it looks like another dimension, especially on the screen. I think it really kind of pops up like that.
Yeah, it looks very different.
It does look different on here. Part of it is I've noticed on a lot of the phone screens, the reds have a tendency to almost have this like 3D.
Yeah.
Sometimes the red on a web page will like pop out. So I wonder.
I love that someone asked about a poster. I floated this idea and everyone was like, nobody buys posters anymore.
Oh, that's not true at all.
And I was like, like, I think this would make a
Now you
really
have
cool
some.
poster.
Now you have some research done for that. Someone wants to know that they can get a
Yeah.
poster from this. Well, if they should change their mind and put posters
Yeah.
out, I'll tell everybody about them.
Cool.
Make it. He says, make it. Yeah. I wanted to touch on what you said too about the album cover thing. Though a lot of famous photographs
Yeah.
have been used. When I showed people the Salgado gold mining ones, that was a album cover for Jerry Harrison of the Talking Heads. His solo album had one of those on the cover.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've seen other, maybe like Arbus or somebody.
Yeah.
else.
Deanna Lawson has been doing Blood Oranges
Okay.
covers for a while.
Oh, right.
So,
yeah.
like, things are still, those collaborations are still happening, which is very, very cool.
Yeah. I don't want to move around the side and see another angle on this.
Maybe I'll...
There's some very interesting textures. Yeah, you can, if you want to slide the, oh yeah, I realized we didn't move the YouTube people.
That's okay, I can slide it. There we go.
Yeah. These really,
But yeah, hopefully people will be seeing a lot more of Henri's work in the future.
yeah.
But this cameraless work is also important and will be a good segue to what we're looking at next, which is contemporary cameraless work. So there's really been an interest, kind of a burgeoning interest in the past 20 years with antique processes and cameraless photography by contemporary artists across media. I mean, like not just photographers, all kinds of artists. And so we'll look at two new acquisitions
Let's head over there.
that the museum got recently.
The, whoops.
And then I also want to show everyone the Hidden Mother ambrotype, which
Yeah,
is awesome.
let's, I think maybe I got some power to this one, so I'm going to unplug it again. We'll move over there. Just changing our location here. Well, it is interesting you're talking about these kind of old technology. People are going back towards and showing.
And I can show you this Anna Atkins cyanotype. That'll be a good example of what cameraless photography means.
Okay.
What it actually
Yeah.
is.
Okay, so let's see. Here we go. Moving over. Let me make sure this doesn't pop out. Okay, here we go. I'm amazed at how many people right now are like so into film photography.
Right.
Everybody's buying film, shooting film.
Yeah.
I've been digital for like almost 18 years
Yeah,
fully.
right.
But it's really like taking a swing back the other way. Where do you want to start? On the end down here?
Well, first, we can just kind of talk about the ambrotype, which is, if we can get close, that
Yeah.
would be
Let me
cool.
make an adjustment here on everything, and then we'll move in closer. I might just pop this out again so everybody can see. All right, we're doing a little thing here so I can get everybody close up.
So this is an ambrotype from 1858, which let me grab a pair of gloves and I can hold it. So ambrotypes replaced daguerreotypes in the 1850s, and they're really high quality prints. And it's hard to tell because they do have a reflective surface.
Yeah.
But this is called a Hidden Mother portrait. So usually, because exposure times were so long, people couldn't stay still. And so, especially for infants, I mean, think about an infant.
Yeah, right?
They're never staying still.
Yeah.
So oftentimes studio photographers would have the mother or father or nanny or whomever hold the child still, but then cover them up with like weird fabric backdrops.
It's so funny to even do that because you can see the hands.
Right.
So it's like, why pretend like they're not there?
Right, exactly.
That's so funny.
But there's a whole like tradition of this hidden mother portrait, and I just love that this example is in our collection.
Yeah.
And it's also hand colored, so ambrotypes and daguerreotypes. You could apply coloring to, it's hard to tell, but in the baby's cheeks and lips, you can kind of see a little bit of color.
Yeah, let me zoom in on this one a little bit.
And I think the baby is actually holding a head clamp, which was another method for keeping people still.
I'm sure they loved that.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why you don't see folks smiling in photographs like this, is because you'd have to hold it for a really long time.
Right?
Yeah, so everybody looks pretty stoic usually.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
So now we can kind of look at this cyanotype made by Anna Atkins. She was a British woman, and she kind of learned this process from Sir John Herschel, as well as her father, who was a chemist and like mineralogist and zoologist. I guess in this period you could just be everything.
Yeah, right?
You could just be everything. And so the reason why it's blue is because of the chemicals that are used. So specifically ferric ammonium citrate and potassium ferrocyanide.
Oh.
Which sounds a little dangerous.
Yeah, it sounds a little risky.
But essentially she was interested in kind of creating a taxonomy of flora in her area of Britain. And so she began collecting samples and then laying them on chemically treated paper, exposing them to sunlight, and then developing and fixing them so that they would stay in this state. And so she actually published the first scientific manual with photographic prints in 1843.
That's interesting.
Called British Algae Cyanotype Impressions.
I want to note that actually the YouTube camera looks pretty true to life. The TikTok is a little more saturated.
Yeah.
A fair amount more saturated than what it looks like here. I'm going to move in closer. Sometimes that affects how it looks. Trying not to cast my shadows in there too much.
But this is a great example of what a cameraless photograph is, because it sounds like an oxymoron, right? It sounds like, well, how can you make a photograph without a camera?
Right.
But if you really distill the photographic process to its base components, you can.
I like how, so on the screen it's more contrasty too. The whites are not this bright in real life, but you get some of the contour in the stem and on some of the leaves there. You can kind of, it has a, looks a little more than 3D than what you can tell on the screen here.
So we can move to a new acquisition. So we're like zooming to 2017.
Jumping way ahead. Can I do the math?
1853 to 2017.
It's, what is 164 years. There we go.
Math is not my strong suit.
Yeah, right.
That's why I pursued art history. So this is a photograph by Moroccan French artist named Ito Barada. She grew up in Tangier and makes a lot of work that deals with like the legacy of colonialism in Morocco and how that has kind of impacted education and economics. And so this example, she's not just a photographer. She makes all kinds of sculpture, installations, but this example is called Bonbon 2, and what she did was she collected the wrappers of candies native to Tangier, laid them on top of light-sensitive paper, and created this exposure. And I just love like the depth of this is so beautiful. Like you get this nice transparency here, really nice color and range of tone, and then just straight up like silhouettes. It's just, I think, a really nice example of her work. And she was invited to be in the Whitney Biennial this year.
Okay.
So that's very exciting.
Yeah, that's good.
And then I think our final, well, we can kind of get a close-up of this.
Get a little bit closer on this one here real quick.
But yeah, we're very excited to have Barada's work in our collection. We've been trying to build our contemporary art collection, which can be difficult given the price points of contemporary work.
Sure.
But we're very excited. She's a very important artist, so.
Let's move down here. Zoom in a little bit. There we go. All right, let me get these squared up here.
Yeah.
I was checking our YouTube. I'm going to double check over there if you want to give us an introduction here. Thanks, Ray. I haven't been doing reintroductions throughout the day. We're at the Eskenazi Museum of Art at Indiana University viewing their photography print collection. We've got just a little bit more to do here. If you came in late, I'm gonna have the whole thing, hour and a half unedited up on YouTube, so you can check that out there. So I'm here with Dr. Lauren Richman, who is the Assistant Curator of Photography here, and she's kind of taking us through some of the works and the artists and letting us know, especially with these more contemporary ones, what the processes were and how they were made and all that sort of thing. So let's hear about this one here. Yeah,
so this is a work by an American artist named Ellen Carey, and she is especially known for her color cameraless work, this being a really nice example. Essentially, in the dark, she manipulates the paper, and it's a little hard to see in reproductions, but there really is kind of a three-dimensionality to this work. It's kind of topographical, which explains, like the image of it looks that way, but the paper is actually also folded and kind of crumpled in various places.
We'll look at that here.
Yeah, we can do a close-up.
Is that part of the process that makes it like that?
She does it herself. She manipulates the paper in the darkroom, and then she creates selective color exposures. So she streams light through color filters. Okay. If you think of like a theater gel, they're usually called gels, I think. Yeah. Through these filters to create selective exposures on the paper.
Does she do them one color at a time?
Yeah, one color at a time, which kind of explains the nice division of color, but also a lot of overlapping too.
Would each of these be their own color, or do the colors ever kind of combine? So did she do like a green, a darker blue, a lighter blue, a red, a pink, like that?
Yeah, she does them individually.
Sure. I wondered if sometimes the colors
meld together,
blend into each other, or those
I suppose she could have combined as well, because it is a nice gradient that that comes together in a lot of sections. But yeah, this is also from 2017, and I should re-note that both the Ito Barada photograph and the Ellen Carey photograph, these are unique prints. You know, there's no negative, so these are singular.
One of one.
One of one, which is
that's
rare
cool. Yeah.
in photography.
That's true. I think it seems like sometimes people that might go against some of the collectivity of photography, since it can be reproduced in a almost unlimited
the democratic
fashion.
nature of being able to produce many copies.
And I looked at her website, and she's got a whole, you can see like 30 of these different ones, and I was looking to see if because the museum has a couple of hers, or is it just...
we have two, this one and then one called Caesura in our collection that we recently acquired. So we have two.
Because I was looking to see if on her website the one that you had here was there, and it was hard to tell.
Hard to tell, yeah.
Because while there's similar colors from piece to piece, none of them look exactly the same.
Right.
For obvious reasons. Let's look a little closer up here.
And she also used a glossy paper, which I think is notable because it really kind of supports that topographical element.
Yeah, the gloss is cool.
And so
I'm getting
it's like
zoomed
really
in down close.
You get a lot of different...
Yeah, the gloss is cool.
And so
I'm getting
it's like
zoomed
really
in down close.
You get a lot of different angles, colors. It's kind of...
So this was probably when she did it like pretty bunched up.
Yeah, I think that's how she was able to be so selective.
And then it gets, they obviously...
It bleeds,
Yeah. But especially, in the center there where there was all the... So when these would go on display, are they usually behind glass or always behind glass?
Yeah.
Would this one be behind glass?
Yes. They will be. Some artists who work with cameraless techniques prefer to exhibit them unframed, which is also interesting. But for us, being at this museum, and most museums, I'd say, would want to have these safely behind UV glazed glass or Optium, which is an acrylic, to protect them.
But something like this wouldn't be... Would it be like flattened, or would there be some space between the glass to let it...
Yeah, it would be floated.
Yeah, okay.
So when we do frame this, we will probably use a nice white frame, have it floated, give it a lot of room.
And what were you saying about are you going to have these out at a specific time?
We are planning, we're planning an exhibition of cameraless photography.
That's still dates to be determined.
TBD.
Yeah.
My lips are zipped.
Yeah, right? That's cool though. I like getting up close and you can see more of the... Very cool.
Yeah, but artists around the world working with these techniques. I think there has not been a lot of focus on it in recent years, so...
Yeah, it's interesting how this stuff comes around, styles come around, techniques. It's almost like so much of it's been done, you've got to circle back around.
Everything's cyclical.
Old is new again.
Right.
Very cool. Well, yes, the paper is actually crinkled. You can see, it is hard to tell. Let me come around the other side too. I could notice it down here further. You can see at the edge, there's some weight. It's a little bit wavy at the edge. But you can see the light coming off of it a little bit. Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. So,
yeah,
keep us posted on the TBD.
I will.
Well, we'll stay in touch. You can follow, the museum where they're at online. Do you have a place where you do most of your announcements and stuff?
Yeah, we have an events calendar on our website.
Okay.
Which is artmuseum@iu.edu.
Okay.
Really simple. And then we have an Instagram account, and I'm sure we have a Facebook account. I'm just not on Facebook.
Sure.
But we post all kinds of announcements on our social media.
Very good. Yeah, and I'll pass those along to you all as well. I'm going to do a quick walkthrough just to do one more kind of like recap. Let's start at our beginning. And that way you can kind of get an idea if you tuned in at the end, some of the other stuff we talked about, and we'll get, this is going to all be on YouTube probably later today, where we talk in more in depth about about each of these works, and who they are and what the processes are and some of the history behind them, their significance within the world of photography. So this was a really exciting opportunity. We first talked about it in the fall, so I've been counting the days down since we first had a conversation about doing this. It's been a lot of fun, and I'll have to come back and check out some of these exhibitions as they come up.
Yeah, I should also say that our prints, drawings, and photographs collection is over 22,000 objects.
Oh, wow.
So our photo collection specifically is over 12 or 13,000.
Okay.
So imagine this is just one very, very, very small selection.
Yeah.
At our institution.
Yeah, that's incredible. Incredible. All right. Well, I'm going to zoom out here. Thank you so much for stopping by. Wave goodbye. All right.